something happens, I can always walk and have a job. But at that point in time, I ended up losing my job. And since I lost my job, it's kind of like a domino effect. You lose your job, then you ain't got no money. So I ended up losing my apartment, losing my house. And the people that, they wasn't going to pay for me, pay my half of the rent. So I found out that day what it's like to be homeless, because I was homeless for a while. I stayed with a friend here, a friend there. I started working for food. And I cleaned this one person's house just for a plate of food. And even though I was doing that, instead of saving what money I was making and stuff like that, I was putting it right back into what I was doing. I was still smoking, still drinking. And my parents, they didn't allow me to stay at their house. They did one time, but they told me I had to sleep in the garage. But that was only because they were having a house put in. And that's what they said anyway. I think I skipped a page. I'm going to skip ahead to a couple years after that. This is probably 97. I had spent the whole day partying. I was already hooked on crystal meth, and I also found my way to be hooked on cocaine as well. And as I'm doing all this stuff, I'm still on probation for the wreck, for that DUI. And sorry, I keep pausing a lot. I was on my way to a party, and like I said, all that weekend, I've already been partying that whole entire weekend. Just my system was just full of stuff, and I was on my way to a party already, and I thought I'd seen something in the road, and to me it looked like a deer staying in there, and so I swerved and went around it. The car behind me swerved and went around whatever it was as well. And next thing I know, I turned my turn signal on because I was going to the house. They had a big bonfire going, and next thing I know, I see all these lights behind me. And long story short, I got arrested while on probation for another DUI. This doesn't seem right. Oh, there it is. Sorry. I ended up getting a 1-year sentence for the probation violation, which means I got 6 months for good behavior. And as I'm in that church, there was a traveling revival. In that jail, there was a traveling revival. They were doing a tour, going to jails, trying to teach the word of God. And I'm in this revival, and I'm standing there, and they said, close your eyes and just listen to the music. So I did, and along with everybody else, and I started swaying back and forth, and all of a sudden I don't hear the music no more, and I could feel wind blowing in my hair. And back then, I did have hair back then. It was probably back down to here. Time I got out, I didn't have any. It was all over the floor falling out. But I was standing there, and I opened my eyes up, and I'm no longer in the gymnasium. I'm standing there, I'm looking around, I can see a cliff of mountains here, the ocean, and I'm on a beach. And I thought, am I hallucinating? And I looked down the beach, and I seen this white horse. And there's this woman in a wedding gown can't see her face, but she's in a wedding gown on the horse. And all of a sudden I look down and I could see footprints walking past me. And I had no idea what was going on. And I read a little bit of the Bible back in, when I was going to church as a kid, here and there. And all of a sudden I see that happening, and next thing I know, I'm back in the auditorium, or gymnasium, and I'm in people's arms because they had caught me because I was falling. And I was speaking to one of the people there, one of the other inmates, and they said, my dad's a preacher. What you had witnessed was a vision. And he called his dad up, and his dad explained it to me. The footsteps is Jesus. And then he explained the whole bride and, all that. Jesus is going to get his bride. And I took that as... People tell me I'm wrong on this, but I took that as in, if I don't straighten up, Jesus is going to walk on past me and leave me, and he's going to collect his bride. But, like I said, I still don't know the full thing about that, but as I'm in jail, like I said, spending my 6 months, my mom had came and visited me and told me that my grandmother was going to move from Ohio and rent a place across the street from them so that I would have a place to live when I got out. And once again, my grandmother was saving the day, and because my grandfather had already passed on, and which I never got to say goodbye or but that's my fault because I was out doing stupid stuff. And in '99, I was hooked on pills at this point, taking any pills that anybody had. I didn't care what they were or what they did. And I was also stealing my grandmother's pills. She had pills laying all over the house. Actually, I think it was hydrocodone or codeine or something. But I was always taking her medicine and using that to get high on. I told her I was only taking them because I had a headache. And this part is a little rough for me. I got to the point to where I didn't want to live the way I was living anymore. And I just felt like the world was against me and that God was against me for some reason. Because every time I tried something, I was either got in trouble, put back in jail, rapper, or I was getting lectured all the time by my dad, telling me I was no good, and I decided that I didn't want to live anymore. And I was at a friend's house, and he handed me a whole handful of pills, and he said, "Here, take these." And he didn't mean to take them all at once, but that's what I did. I took the whole handful, and he was yelling at me. He's like, "Man, what are you doing? Don't." And I said, "I don't care anymore." I said, "I just want to die." And he goes, "Well, don't do it here." And he had told me that him and his wife told me that my face turned pale white. And I said, "Fine." So I walked on home. Actually, I don't know how I got home that night. But I know for some reason I woke up the next day. And first thing in the morning, I don't think the sun was all the way up. He's calling me, asking me if I'm alive. I'm like, well, I'm answering the phone, so I guess I am. And he said, "Well, you took all those pills you shouldn't be." He said that was a combination of everything. And for some reason, I guess, the Lord didn't want me to go at that point in time, and I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it just yet. And a little bit on down the road, I decided that I'm done with living the way I'm living. And I seen a friend of mine, and he was looking for some weed, and I happened to have a little bit, and I gave it to him. And come to find out, he had basically snitched out the entire town. Anybody who partied, he basically because he had got himself in some trouble, and he basically snitched out the entire town. I mean, I woke up the next morning after I gave him that, and sorry, I'm jumping around a lot, but I heard this pounding on the door. And anybody who has gotten in any trouble knows what that certain kind of knock sounds like and what that is. And I looked out one window, I got cops in the back of the house, cops on the side of the house, all the way around the house. And at this point in time, I was already I had a reputation for hanging around drug dealers. Anybody that I knew dealt in some kind of drugs in some way. In which, I also, gave away and sold, and I had even attempted to make meth at one point in time, and that was bad. But I opened the door, and the cops are there, and they just come rushing in. I said, "What's going on?" And we have a warrant for your arrest. And like I said before, my grandmother also lived with me because it's her house. And they said, "Is anybody else in this house?" And I said, "Yeah, my grandmother, but she's asleep. Don't bother her." They went in and woke her up and forced her to watch me get handcuffed. And they took me out, put me in the car, went on to jail again. And sorry, this part is also rough. When I was able to get my phone call, I had called my mom because nobody was answering my phone at the house. My grandmother wasn't answering, and I asked my mom, I said, "What's going on?" She's not answering the phone over there. And she's like, "Well, after they hauled you off, we had to call an ambulance because she was talking about her chest hurting, and we thought she was having a heart attack. So we had to take her and get her checked out." And I was like, and I just felt this little, and I reached my bottom. I was done. I was not about. I didn't want, because I felt like that I had hurt her, and which I did, because I almost caused her to have a heart attack, and because my grandmother was everything to me, because she raised me, she did what my parents didn't want to do. I was in jail for a month, and they let me out because because when they searched the house, they didn't find anything, because I had already decided I was quitting anyway, and I just decided the day too late, I guess. But like I said, the guy that snitched on me snitched out the entire town, and I'm glad he did, because I would not have been able to stop doing what I was doing if he didn't. And that's the way I'm looking at it, because I probably would have got my wish eventually and died. And when I got out, I had exiled myself from everybody. I Wouldn't answer the phone if it rang. I wouldn't answer the door if someone knocked. And if I knew that somebody that I knew was around the house, I hid behind furniture because I did not want to get caught up into using again. And I didn't go to no rehab or anything like that. I toughed it out on my own, which is not a good idea. And I got a job at this little convenience store. And it's one of those places that, you can get your gas, get your food. They had a kitchen and all that. I worked there for a couple years. And I had met a friend of mine. And I knew the guy from somewhere, and I couldn't figure out where this guy was from. And we became good friends. And he was working the cash register at that place. And then I realized where I knew him from. He was one of the deputy sheriffs at the jail. So right then and there, God's already put me with people. And me and this guy who's a sheriff, I would never hung around a sheriff before. We go out fishing and it's just, and like I said, I worked there for a while, about 3 or 4 years. And I had became 3 years sober already. And one day I'm working, and this woman and her cousin walks in, and I couldn't even talk to her. Every time I tried to talk to her, I would start stuttering. And finally, I was able to talk to her. And eventually, I ended up marrying her. And as a matter of fact, this past February, we celebrated 20 years of being married. And I know I'm stuttering a lot and stuff, but I have been 23 years sober coming June. I'll be celebrating 23 years of being sober and being clean. And somebody got a call. March 11th, 2022, I found out and I was diagnosed with colon cancer. And had the surgery, I think it was April 14th. She's shaking her head yes, so. Had the surgery on the April 14th. And when I came out of the surgery was a success. They got rid of all the cancer. Thank God for that. He was with me there. And I was all upset, even though they got rid of the cancer. I was upset because I had to wear a colostomy bag. And my wife even told me, she's like, don't be upset, at least you're alive. I said, well, that's true. And I had to wear the bag for like 3 or 4 months. And make sure I'm not getting ahead of myself. I was talking to my wife in the bedroom one day, and I said, I need to find a church and possibly something that has, where if I feel like I'm going to use or drink or something, I can go for help. And we were in the bedroom talking about it. And right then and there, all of a sudden I hear knocking on the door, and I'm like, well, who's that? And the dogs are barking. I go and I open the door up, and there's Brother Scott, Bob, and, well, Justin's not here tonight, but Justin. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's convenient. And walked out there, and they invited me to church. And I was like, well, I really don't want to go right now because I got this bag I'm wearing. Started making all kinds of excuses, And I said, it makes a lot of noise. And Bob looks at me, he goes, well, that's okay. We got too many babies in the church that are crying all the time. No one's going to hear your bag. And I was like, okay. I said, I'll see y'all Sunday. And that next Sunday I showed up, sitting in the very back, scared to death, and just sweat just pouring off of me because my last experience with a Baptist church, they ended up kicking me out for every reason they could think of. My hair was too long. They said cut it or don't come back. Or if I had a earring in, because during the 90s that's a popular thing, They kicked me out for having an earring in, told me to go home or take it out, so I went home. Then there was another time, it was a Wednesday service, what they call street clothes night, and all the teenagers what we would do is they would have a meeting in the gym, play basketball, because in Indiana that's the most popular thing to do. I walked in wearing T-shirt, jeans, and they looked at me and they said, you can't wear that. I said, well, you guys said it's a street clothes night, that we don't have to dress up. Their idea of street clothes was khaki pants and a polo shirt and dress shoes. So I decided not to ever go back to that church because then I thought that's what all churches, I thought all Baptist churches were the same. I thought they were all like that. And so when I came into this one, that's what I was expecting. And I got the devil in my head saying, run, run, run. They're going to treat you bad. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. And I almost got up and ran. I was kind of fixing to sit up, and then somebody stopped me and introduced themselves. I can't remember who it was. And then Brother Scott came out and started preaching, and I'm like, okay, I can do this. But I was looking around, and I didn't see a lot of people that I was told was coming here, and I was just scared to death to be here, kind of like I'm scared to death right now talking, but anyway, I got off topic. I was fixing to go in for my second surgery, and I was already attending the Overcomer meetings here, which thank God for those meetings. Those meetings are great. If there's anybody here that haven't been to one of those meetings, you got to check it out because they're doing a lot of good stuff, and you don't even have to be an addict to go. And plus, they make some pretty good food on Tuesday nights too. But I went in for my second surgery. I was supposed to have the bag. The bag was supposed to be removed, and I'm really cloudy on this part because I don't remember a lot of that day because of all the drugs they had to pump me up, they filled me up with, and because I woke up one night and my wife is laying on the couch. I'm on the bed of the hospital. And I felt cold. I felt something wet. And sorry if this is too graphic for some of the kids here, but I was bleeding out. Blood was just pouring out of me. And I turned to the light, and my wife's like, what's wrong? What's going on? Because all she knows is I'm hitting the button to get a nurse in there. I said, I'm bleeding out. What do you mean you're bleeding out? I'm bleeding out. And she looked up, she's like, oh my God, it was just almost covered in blood. And nurse came in there, see what was going on, and they got, I think it was almost all of ICU came down to my room. All the ICU surgeons and doctors, and they took they were trying forever. They couldn't get the bleeding to stop. They even put a 20-pound bag on me and taped it down to me, and the bleeding was still, they worked on me for at least a couple hours. And they were also waiting for my surgeon to get there. And like I said, I really can't remember a lot of it, but I remember asking one of them if I was going to die that night, because they couldn't get it to stop, and I was freaking out. I was even praying, and I know Miss Patty and everybody was already praying for me, and I told them, I said, I'm getting sleepy. And they all started, yelling at me, don't go to sleep, don't go to sleep. I got an IV in this arm with fentanyl going. I had another IV in this arm with fentanyl going. And they were just putting me up so much. And so I did end up going home. Don't know what day or how long it was, because I don't remember anything else. All I remember is I'm home, and I was hurting so bad, which they had me on some narcotics, and I didn't want to take them, for one, and because it was some of the stuff that I was doing back when I was younger. And Cynthia's like, well, you should go ahead and take it, because now you know more than what you did. You're more responsible. And I said, yeah, but anyway, we're laying there in bed, sleeping, or I was trying to sleep. And the same thing happened to me that happened to me at the hospital. I woke up bleeding out again. And so we went to the emergency room here in town, and they put me in an ambulance, taking me all the way to back to Nashville, where I had to have my surgery at. And altogether, I think I had 3 surgeries altogether, trying to get the blood to stop. And then finally, they put me on a wound vac. And I'm just so grateful to God, because He saved my life several times in my life. And even though I was a no good, dirty, homeless drug addict, He still took me under His wing, and still, for some reason, chose to save my life. I mean, it's no joke when everybody says that the Lord works in mysterious ways, because He really does. But that's pretty much all I've got. I'm sorry it was all choppy, and I kept pausing and reading and stuff like that, but there is always a reason for stuff that goes on in your life. And if you don't know God or Jesus, you need to get to know Him, because what He does for us, we don't even deserve, and He still does it. And that's all I got.
I just want you to bow your heads tonight. Just as Ann's going to play a line or two, and I just want you to pray. Whatever the Lord lays on your heart, whether it's come up tonight or whatever it is, and kneel where you're at. Just seek the Lord at this time.